guys, hope you're all well. I thought I'd talk about something different today. I've been so down the rabbit hole with the Delphi case, and then for those of you who watched my last 2 weeks of Crime Story Sunday over on Michelle Walks, you'll know that I went very down the rabbit hole with the Bardstown murders as well. So I thought, while I'm down the rabbit hole, let's talk about this case. Who killed Boston police officer John O'Keefe? Now, this is fair warning, right? That I know this case is controversial, and I haven't covered this case. I've been following it. I've been following it on Court TV. To be honest, I haven't followed all the court hearings. I've gone back this morning and listened to the last few court hearings. I've just been following it on Court TV. I've not been heavily invested in this case, but I know it's controversial, and it's become more controversial since the arrest of Turtle Boy, who is a blogger stroke YouTuber who has been arrested for harassing witnesses. So he's backing Karen Reid, who is the defendant, the accused in this case. So this is not a stream about Turtle Boy, right? I don't want to talk about Turtle Boy. It's not about him. It's not about his case that's now a thing. This is about Karen Reid and who killed John O'Keefe, all right? So if the chat gets controversial in any way, I don't want to spend like 3/4 of this live stream monitoring and deleting comments in the chat. All right, so I want to focus just on the case, not Turtle Boy. If it gets really controversial, then I'll switch it to members only, so it's a lot easier to manage, because I've not given mods any warning for this. I've not given anyone any warning for this. And I've literally put this live stream up, like the schedule up, about 20 minutes ago. So at the moment, I don't think I've even got any mods in the chat. So, so I don't want to spend my entire time policing the chat when I want to talk about the case. So I hope that's clear. And if I have to turn it over to members only, then I hope you realise why. All right, so before we get into the case, and it's probably a new case for some of you, but probably a case that's well known to others as well. So, hello, Rachel. Aussie TV, member for 10 months. 10 months. Hi, Mike. Lemon, Lime and Bittersweet. PJ's World. Well, I'm going to tell you that I'm on the fence with this case. I genuinely do not know what happened to John O'Keefe. So I'm following the evidence as it's known at the moment. So I'm Switzerland. I can see both sides. I think the defense are doing a grand job. I really do. I think there's a lot of reasonable doubt, but we're going to get into that. Hello, Susan. A Wolf. 2 Arctic Wolves. CW. Flicking Bollocks. Shirley. Pamela. Sharon. Your local grandmummy. Hungry Ghost. Elizabeth. Stardust Shorty, member for 11 months. Wow. We've got some really long-standing members now. Love Me, Love Music. What else have we got? Grandma Sherry. Sharon, I think I've said you. Shelley Rue. Mums Amore. Trixie. Cindy. Samantha. Kristen. Be Real. Shazza. Susie. Teresa. Quinny. Can I get to the bottom before a bunch of people come in? Canada-ness. Isabel, ETET, Lynn, and Hindsight's 20. So I think I got to the end. I'm sorry if I missed you. My eyes are terrible. I need to go for an eye test. Wearing glasses doesn't help anymore. I think my eyes have changed so much since I last had my eyes tested. That, yeah, I think I've gone more long-sighted. If I sit away, I can see the chat better, which is weird. Anyway, all right, guys. So on the right hand of your screen is John O'Keefe. So he's or he was rather, a Boston police officer in Massachusetts. And he was found dead on the lawn of a house he was at a party. This is back in January of 2022. On the left hand of your screen is Karen Reed, who at the time was John's girlfriend, and she has been charged with John's murder. Now, we're going to get into the circumstances and then the evidence, but if I'm going to give an opinion, go on, I'll give an opinion. I think the prosecution have overcharged in this case. I think that's the issue. It's overcharged. I can't see any evidence of this being intentional. Even if it turns out that Karen did it and Karen killed him, it was unintentional. Now, in Massachusetts, I don't know what the law would be. Manslaughter. In the UK, it would be causing death by drunken driving. So I don't know what the law is in Massachusetts. However, she's been charged with second-degree murder. All right. So if I am going to give an opinion, I think that's it, that it's overcharging. But as to whether Karen wholly unintentionally ran John over and unwittingly left him to die in the snow, that's a big open question. I think the defense are doing a grand job in providing reasonable doubt. So I've got a lot of clips lined up here to play from the various court hearings. But first, I'm going to just give a background to the case because there are some people, I think, just reading the chat here, who have never heard. Chasing's in the chat. Hi, Tracy Ann. For driving death, manslaughter by motor vehicle. Okay. So, yeah, in the UK, it would be... Because it's weird. Like there's a campaign. There's been campaign going on for years here in the UK to change the law because the law is really confusing. So if you cause someone's death with a motor vehicle, unless you purposefully aim it at them and drive into them, and then you're using your motor vehicle as a weapon, then you would be charged with murder. Because you're using your motor vehicle as a weapon if you intentionally drive into someone. But if you cause someone's death in a motor vehicle, you generally get charged with either causing death by careless driving or causing death by dangerous driving. So if you have a lapse of judgment, as perhaps we could argue Karen Reed had, a lapse of judgment, and momentarily your driving was careless, like it could be that you're checking your phone or you're fiddling with the radio or you turn around momentarily to shout at your kids who are fighting in the back seat, and then you unwittingly drive into someone and kill them, that would be causing death by careless driving. And you may or may not get a prison sentence. Now, that's what the man who killed my son, that's what he got charged with. But he also got charged with, on top of that, he got charged with leaving the scene of an accident because he didn't stop. And I think if he'd stopped, he wouldn't have got a prison sentence, but he did get a prison sentence because there was 2 charges: causing death by careless driving and then leaving the scene of an accident. And the police could prove that he turned round and left the scene going via another route, so he didn't have to go by the CCTV camera at the garage, at the gas station. So that was provable. Then you've got a more serious charge, which is causing death by dangerous driving, which will land you several years in prison. And that's if your driving is completely out of control. Like, let's say you were so out of control that you drove onto the pavement and basically mowed down people before you got control of your vehicle again. That would be causing death by dangerous driving. But if you were intoxicated or under the influence of drugs, then you'll get done above and beyond causing death by careless or dangerous driving. You get done for drink driving or driving while intoxicated and causing someone's death, which is more serious. So you don't get charged with manslaughter for driving badly and killing someone. It's weird. So there is a campaign to change the law. So manslaughter by motor vehicle sounds like a more sensible way that the UK should go. Anyway, I digress. So for the people who don't know anything at all about this case, yes, we're going to get into that, Quinny. We're going to get into that. I've got that lined up, ready to go, because that is a big issue for me, right? That's not road rash. Come on now. Those injuries to his arm, not road rash. I've had road rash, right? Multiple times I've had road rash. That is not road rash, but we'll get there. All right, just for those who don't know anything about this case, I'm just going to read a little bit from this article. Just gives the background. It's the Karen Reid case in Canton, the killing that tore a town apart. This is for the Boston magazine, so it's written very like novelistically, I guess, but it gives the background. So Karen and John, they'd been in a relationship previously when they were in their 20s. So Karen's like 41, I think, now. So they'd been in a relationship previously. For whatever reason, they'd broken up. During the pandemic, they got back together. John sent her a Facebook message. They started talking. They got back together. In the years that they were apart, John had adopted 2 of his sister's kids. His sister and her husband had died, and the 2 kids, so his niece and his nephew, he took them in and adopted them. So there was some friction, right? This but needs to be said. There was some friction in the relationship in the months up to this happening, that Karen felt, and she said this in an interview, Karen felt that John was maybe leaving her with the kids a little bit too much. Like New Year's Eve, she was upset that he went drinking on New Year's Eve, left her with the kids, and he was terribly apologetic, though, and they kind of put it behind them and whatever. But there are reports of them fighting and the relationship being a little bit fractious. But all relationships are fractious, aren't they? Like every relationship I've ever had has been fractious. It's probably why I'm single. But anyway, so there's that. But I don't think that's anything too out of the ordinary. So anyway, this night they were drinking in a bar, well, a couple of bars, and about 12 o'clock-ish, all right, another Boston police officer called Brian Albert, he said that he was going home and he wanted people to join him. Right, so party at Brian's house. That's how it works out. So John O'Keefe and Karen Reid decided to go to this party. However, Karen wasn't happy about it. She wasn't sure whether they were invited. She didn't think she would be invited. I don't think she really knew these people. But she was also not sure that John was invited. But John seemed to just go along with it. And they turned up at Brian's house. All right. So she wanted to just go home. She was tired. She just wanted to go home. But she said, all right, I don't think I'm invited. I don't want to go, but I'll drop you off. So she dropped him off. And this is what she said in an interview with ABC for Nightline. She said that she dropped him off and it was snowy, right? There was this nor'easter blowing in, the snow had started, and it became a little bit of a blizzard, but the snow had just started at that point, but it was really, really cold. This is January 28th into 29th of 2022. So a cold night. John didn't have a coat, so she dropped him off and she watched him walk to the house. All right, this is the house. This is 34 Fairview Road in Canton. This is the house right here. So she watched him go around the side. So that way, I'm not sure. But she watched him go to the side door. And then she was waiting for him to text her or something. She was looking at her phone. After about 10 minutes, she drove away. She drove off. And she thought, this is what she's saying, she thought that John had gone to the house to this party. She went home. She was still expecting John to contact her, but about 1:30, she fell asleep on the couch. And at 4:30, approximately, she woke up. Right, so she passed out. She'd been drinking. Now, this is another controversial issue. I know I'm all over the place, but there's a lot. There's a lot here. There's a lot. They've been drinking the whole of the 28th of the evening of the 28th of January. She said to Nightline that she'd had about 4 drinks. Now, the prosecution say that they can prove that she'd had 9 drinks. So I don't know whether that's through CCTV at these bars that they were in, that they could work out how many drinks she'd had. And they said that she would have been way over the driving limit for alcohol. However, they're just speculating. They're speculating that these 9 drinks that they said she'd had would result in a blood alcohol level of up to 0.29, I think they said. But she wasn't breathalyzed or blood tested or anything. So that's just what the prosecution is surmising. But I think it is safe to say that she was over the limit. So she was drunk, right? How drunk, though, is another matter, right? Was she so drunk, so absolutely paralytically drunk, that she could have knocked John over and not known about it? Now, the prosecution are claiming this is murder, that she in some way intentionally did this because she was mad with him. That's why I think there's overcharging going on in this case, if nothing else. But could she have been so paralytically drunk that she ran him over and didn't realise, went home thinking he'd gone into the house, and he didn't? He was dying of cold. And we're going to get into the autopsy as well. Okay. Now, I haven't seen the autopsy report. If anybody's got the autopsy report, can you let me have it? Because I want to actually read the autopsy report for myself. I've only got what has been said about the autopsy report, but I'd like to have the autopsy report if it's been released. All right. I know there's a lot of court documents in this case, but like I said, I've been following it on Court TV. So Some of you guys in the chat will know far more about this case than I do, but I am starting from the beginning because, as I'm seeing in the chat, lots of people have never heard of this case before. So Parody Patty said they were very loving towards each other at the bar, no sign of fighting. Well, Karen did say that they put the differences that they had over the New Year aside and that they were getting on better. I know, Shelley Roo, it is terrible for the kids, yeah, losing both the parents and their uncle. Yeah, dreadful. I agree with you, Quinny. I do not like drink driving of any kind. Like, driving's dangerous enough. You know, you're driving around in something that's, you know, at least a ton in weight. If you're not responsible while you're doing it, I've got a problem with that. Like, I don't drive for the reason that I'm a bad driver. I mean, look, guys, I think I'm a great driver. I think I'm the best driver in the world, but I'm reckless. So if I get the opportunity to do something really stupid, I'll do it. And I'm like 50 odd years old and I've never learned any different. And I'm also easily distractible, as you can see in this live stream. You know, when I do lives, I'm all over the place because I'm so easily distractible. Like, oh, there's a dog there. Oh, look at that. Oh, look at that. Oh, look at that. And I'm looking everywhere except the road. So I know I'm a dangerous driver, right? So I don't drive for the very reason that I'm a bad driver. I have to admit I'm a bad driver. So somebody who thinks that they're a confident driver has 9 drinks or 4 drinks or however many drinks and gets behind the wheel. I've got a problem with that as well. I really do have a problem with that. But was she that drunk? Was she really that drunk that she did not realize she'd hit him? What she did realize, and I think I've got that clip lined up and maybe I haven't, but there is a clip where she backs into, so that very same night, she backs into a car and smashes her tail light. So she's intoxicated enough to just literally be backing in a straight line and knocks her tail light out. Now, the prosecution are claiming that the tail light was broken when she hit John. But there's evidence, actual video evidence of her breaking her tail light. Well, we don't know because we see the front of her car backing up and she clips another car. So she's saying that's when she broke her tail light. We don't know if that tail light was already broken when she did that. We don't know. But there's all sorts going on in this case that leads me to believe that the prosecution story isn't quite as it seems. Yeah, I've never been diagnosed with ADHD, but yeah, I'm very ADD, I would say. Like, very distractible, but not so much hyper, just very distractible. And but I guess, of course, she could have backed into that car because it was snowing and it was icy, not because she was so intoxicated that she didn't know what she was doing. Anyway, all right. So she believed that John was at this party. Her story. John was at this party. She woke up and she decided that she was concerned. John's nephew was at a sleepover. John's niece was in bed. So she was in the house. She was in bed. But John was nowhere to be seen. So she contacted someone. Okay. So here we get into a bunch of different people. So We've got a bunch of different people. So we've got Brian Albert, who's a Boston PD officer whose house it was. We've got Jennifer McCabe, who's Brian's sister-in-law. Now, those are the two people who are the issues. And also Brian's nephew, Colin, because it's been alleged that John had issues with Colin. Now, that's disputed, but the allegation from the defense side is that it was Brian Albert and Colin Albert that were responsible for Brian's death. And they've basically set up Karen. That's the claim from the defense side. And the defense have been very, very vocal about this. So Karen Reid called Jennifer McCabe and asked if she'd seen John. Right. So she had to kind of find out Jennifer's number. She knew Jennifer was at this party. All right. So within an hour, there was Karen, Jennifer, and then Roberts. Who's Roberts? I don't know who Roberts is. I don't know who Roberts is. It doesn't matter who Roberts is. Anyway, so Jennifer's the issue because of a very controversial Google search. Potentially incriminating Google search that Jennifer McCabe did at 2:27 a.m. But we'll get there. All right. So they all went looking for John, and they got to the house here, 34 Fairview Road in Canton, and they saw him right there on the left-hand side of the yard. There he was, lying in the snow, covered in snow. He was lying there covered in snow. So they tried to revive him. They brushed the snow off him. They tried to resuscitate him, led their bodies over his body to warm him up, brought blankets for him, called paramedics, did mouth to mouth, did all the things. All right. But there was blood coming from his nose, blood coming from his mouth. He had black eyes. He had an injury to his back of his head. And he had these very concerning marks along his right arm. So at 6:04 a.m., 911 was called, but he was pronounced dead at 7:50 a.m. So within days, Karen Reid was charged with manslaughter on suspicion of hitting John with her SUV, a black Lexus SUV. But she's since been charged with second-degree murder, that there was a level of intentionality to it. When did it snow? It had just started snowing, like this nor'easter was blowing in. It had just started snowing when she alleges that she dropped John off at the house. So it was snowing throughout that night. So he was covered in snow when they got to him. Yeah, it was nor'easter. It was really sad. It is really sad. Really sad. So I'm not going to read all of this. Like I said, it reads like a novel. It's a good read. It takes you all the way up to current day. It's a good read. So I've put all of the links that I'm going to show in the chat. But let's have a look at what the medical examiner said. Let's just read this first. All right. Okay, we'll read from here. Where should we start? All right, here we go. Okay, before Roberts, McCabe and Reed, so Karen, found John's body, Roberts told police that Karen had showed them her cracked tail light, saying she'd no idea how it happened the night before. Well, there's a video showing her backing up and clipping this car, and it was the right-hand side of her car, so that would have broken her right tail light. Now, was that tail light already broken? We don't know. Now, the defense are claiming that there's a video that would have shown, I've got it in one of the clips, it would have shown the her SUV passing by from the back and would have shown her going home with an intact tail light. But the time when that video would have shown that, miraculously isn't in evidence. And they claim that, oh, there's been some kind of glitch or there's been some kind of technical issue. And even though we can get the video from earlier on that night, we can't get that precise time when Karen's SUV would have passed by, and it would have shown, without a doubt, that her taillight was intact when she left John. We don't know. We don't know. Now, she's disputing this. When an emergency responder asked Karen how John had injured his face, that first responder claims that she said, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. What she said is that she asked the question, did I hit him? Because she didn't know. At this time, she didn't know whether she'd hit him or not. But since she's come out and had some kind of clarity of thought, which I find a little bit dodgy, she's become clearer and said, no, I definitely didn't hit him because I saw him going up the driveway to the side door. And I waited 10 minutes for him. And then I went. Now, there's also the issue of the broken cocktail glass. So, John can be seen on CCTV walking out of the bar with a cocktail glass. And they found that broken cocktail glass in with patches of blood all around it in the snow near John's body. So he'd got out of that vehicle and that cocktail glass had smashed when he was dying. Now, if he'd got out of that vehicle and gone into the house and then killed in the house, how would that cocktail glass have still been in his hand? Like, they'd have had to know if they were fitting Karen up here, if they were framing Karen, they'd have had to remember that he walked in with that cocktail glass, and they'd have had to take the cocktail glass and smash it so it looked like when he was knocked over there was cocktail glass, which, I don't know. I don't know. The Massachusetts Special Emergency Response Team also claim that there's items consistent with a broken taillight at the scene, but the defence are claiming that that was a fit-up. That's also been planted. Okay. So, let's get into these clips. What shall I play first? Let's play the information from the autopsy first. Yvonne, the member for 12 months. Good morning from New York. Good morning, good morning. Okay, this is from Court TV. All of the clips I'm going to show are in the chat already, in the description box already. What's the motivation for framing her? The motivation would be that Brian and his nephew Colin attacked John and killed him. So they needed to explain why he was dead after he'd been beaten up. So they went and put him in the yard. And then they decided that they'd claim that Karen did it. But there's this Google search that's a big issue. Massive issue. That Jennifer McCabe, she searched how long does it take someone to die in the cold at 2:27. Now, that to me is incredibly incriminating. However, the prosecution have come back with an explanation as to why that happened. And they're saying that she was searching something else at 2:27, something to do with baseball, and she just left the window open on her phone. And then when they found John, that's when she searched, how long does it take someone to die in the cold? But because this window was already open, it registered as 2:27 rather than whenever the time was that she searched that when they found John. Now, I'm not expert enough to be able to tell you categorically that if you leave your window open, I mean, it doesn't seem right. If you leave your a window open on your computer and then, or your phone, and then you come back to it later to do a new search, does it record the time that the window was opened, or does it record the time of that search, that particular search? I would say it records the time of that particular search, but I don't know. I'm not expert enough in phone technology to know that. But I think that's going to be a massive deal at the trial. Now, Karen's supporters are claiming that it won't get to trial, but the trial has been set for March 2024. So there is a trial date, and it is going forward to trial. But if it can be proven, or at least the jury is convinced, that Jennifer McCabe did make that Google search about how long does it take someone to die in the cold at 2:27, well, that clears Karen, because Karen was at home at that time. They're saying that's exculpatory evidence because she was at home at that time. Daughter of Scotland, member for 26 months. You must be one of my oldest members, longest serving members. It will record the time of the search. That's what I would think. Yeah, that's what I would think. Because look, I leave Windows open on my, like, is it the same on your computer? Like, look, I've not got my phone with me. My phone's in the other room. But if you do a search on Google on your phone, and then you don't close that window, I never close my windows on my phone. I just click off Google Chrome. Well, does that count as closing down your window? Because if you then go into your windows are all still there. Or did she leave that window open and she never closed Google Chrome? Was that the thing? Like, if you close Google Chrome and then come back to it, so you're still opening the same, if you close Google Chrome and then you do your next search, you're opening a new window. So what she must have done then is the window's open and then she's just put her phone down without closing out Google Chrome. And if that's the case, maybe it will show the time when that window was open. I don't know. I honestly don't know. I honestly don't know. So when you close the window, is the time it thinks you've finished. Yeah, but if you get rid of your windows, so you flick your windows closed, all your window, like if I open my Google Chrome, I've got like 1 billion windows open because I just click off Google Chrome. But then when I do a new search, it opens a new window, I think. I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, because what Jennifer McCabe is claiming is that she searched that when they were trying to revive John. That she was asked to make that search when they were trying to revive John. So that would have been, well, they call 911 at 6:04, so that would have been shortly before then. So Laurie says, I think it will show the first search time in the second. I would have thought it would, yeah. That it doesn't matter when you open the window, that it would record the time for each search. Surely that's right. But is it the same on a phone? Like, is it different on a phone or the same on a phone? Like I've got at the moment 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 windows open on this computer. So when I end this live, if I just close the lid of my computer, next time I open it up and put my password in, all those windows will still be there. So if I then use one of those windows to do a dodgy Google search about, I don't know, how to murder someone and get away with it, well, that search will be recorded. That search will be recorded in my history. It doesn't matter if the window was open to begin with. That search will be there. And that time of that search will be there. Surely. So is it the same on a phone? I would think it would be the same on the phone. That it doesn't matter whether your window's open or not. It's the time of that search. Because everybody would be getting away with all sorts of things. It would be well known in the criminal world that that's what you do. You just leave your windows open and then they can't tell what you've searched for. Like, I don't know, if you were like making bombs or something, you were looking up recipes for making bombs. You just leave a window open so that they don't know when you searched it. Or would it know that you searched it, but just not the time? It would record the search, but the time would be different. I don't know. Court TV. It's not this Court TV that I've got up in front of you that I'm going to play a clip from. It's another Court TV from the same month. Jennifer Coffendaffer was on, claiming to be an expert in phone data. Now, she is an ex-FBI agent, all right, but she's claiming that she's an expert in phones. And she says it would record the time of the search from the time the window was open. So it'd record the search, but the time isn't the right time because it's recorded that time of that search being when that window was opened. I know. Surely that phone must have data as to when the window was open and then when each search was made. I don't get it. And maybe we're going to have to wait till the trial to see what each side's expert says. Sassafras Calf, member for 12 months. Thank you. And it will be down to which expert is the most believable to the jury. Because I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. Anyway, we're gonna look at the autopsy. Like I said, I have not got the autopsy report. Yes, hey Wolf, thank you. You assume every search can be audited for individual times. Yes, that's what I would think. No, I don't believe that Jennifer Coffendaffer is an expert in phone technology. I don't think she is. But some of the things she says I agree with. A lot of what she says I don't agree with. But even if she's an FBI agent, it doesn't mean that she's an expert in phone technology. I'm sure she's not going to be called to the stand at the trial as a phone expert. They're going to get some really shit hot phone experts, aren't they? But Karen, bless her, she's running out of money. She's paying out of pocket for all of these experts. She's really going for it. And like her family are helping her, and like she's just going to end up bankrupt, and so are her family by the sound of things. I mean, it's a shame that she doesn't have the same amount of money that Alec Murdoch had available. But every last probably dollar of the family's money is going into this defense. Yeah, she's getting donations still, but still, it's a lot of money. I mean, it would have to be a lot of donations. A lot of donations. All right, let's play this clip. So this is about the autopsy. Yeah, I mean, she's not working. She's got medical expenses as well as her defense. So hopefully she's raised a lot of donations, or else she really will end up bankrupt and her family will. And, you know, sooner or later, there's only so many thousands of dollars you can raise by donations. Sooner or later, goodwill dries up. She owns a home. Yeah, but does she own it outright, or is it on a mortgage? Because if that house is mortgaged, then she can't sell that for her defence, because when she sells it, it will go to pay the mortgage. So it would only be if she owns the property outright that she'd be able to sell that. But then where would she live? Anyway, let's play this clip. So this is about the autopsy. Let me know that you can hear this. Okay.
The house where they say John O'Keefe was murdered. This is an unreal story. So we're going to go through the evidence piece by piece. Going to bring in the experts in just a second. But first, let's take a listen from the prosecution's case report, the findings made during the autopsy in this case. Let's listen.
On January 31st, Dr. Irini Scordi-Bello from the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner conducted the autopsy of Mr. O'Keefe. The doctor advised the troopers that she observed several abrasions to the victim's right forearm, 2 swollen black eyes, a small cut above the right eye, a cut to the left side of the nose, an approximately 2-inch laceration to the back right of his head, and multiple skull fractures that resulted in bleeding of the brain. Dr. Scordi-Bello further advised the troopers that the victim's pancreas was a dark red color indicating hypothermia, was a contributing factor to his death. Dr. Scordi-Bello opined from her examination that the significant blunt force trauma injuries occurred prior to Mr. O'Keefe becoming hypothermic, as evidenced by hemorrhaging in his pancreas and stomach. Mr. O'Keefe had arrived at the Good Samaritan Medical Center with a body temperature reading in the low 80s. The doctor opined that the extensive injuries to his head likely rendered Mr. O'Keefe incapacitated.
What does all that mean? Let's bring in our experts. We've got a great...
Okay, we'll listen to Vinny's experts in a minute. So the skull fractures were what killed him. Blunt force trauma was stated. So he died from blunt force trauma. So the skull fractures were the actual thing that killed him, but he also had hypothermia. But the hypothermia happened after. So he didn't have hypothermia first. He got hypothermia after the injuries happened. Didn't the dog bite him? We're going to get there very shortly, Wendy. So the 2 black eyes. Now, the prosecution are claiming that the black eyes are a result of the skull fractures, which does make sense. So if you have a fractured skull and you have bleeding in your brain, and the damage to the back of his head, they say, is the impact site. So there's a laceration to the back of his head, but inside his head, there's a skull fracture that radiates out from the back of his head. Now, they're claiming that bang to his head, or the skull fractures, occurred either when the vehicle hit him or when he hit the deck, and that caused the skull fracture. And the skull fracture causes bleeding in the brain, and because the blood doesn't have anywhere to go inside your head, it comes out of the eyes. So the soft tissues in the eyes fill up with blood, and it makes it look like you've got black eyes. And then there's bleeding from your nose and bleeding from the mouth, but like wherever, often bleeding from the ears is a really big indicative sign of a skull fracture, just for anybody who knows. Who if you see someone unconscious bleeding from the ears, you can pretty much guarantee they have a skull fracture of some kind. So I don't know if he was bleeding from his ears, but they said he was bleeding from his nose, and these black eyes are indicative, not necessarily of him being hit in the eyes, but of him having a skull fracture. But that doesn't negate the possibility that he could have been attacked, and that caused his skull fracture. So the skull fractures killed him. The hypothermia came on after. But because it was very cold, how long would it take for hypothermia to happen? Now, he was only found at something past 5. All right. So let's take the prosecution's argument, and then let's take the defense argument. So the prosecution are claiming that Karen intentionally knocked him over and left him to die. And the skull fractures happened either from the impact to his head, which broke her tail light. They're claiming that there's DNA on his car, on her car, sorry. But we'll get there in a few moments. Or that the skull fractures happened when he hit the deck. But he was found on the lawn. So unless he hit the deck on the road and then crawled to the lawn, then surely he wouldn't fracture his skull hitting grass and snow. So the skull fracture would have had to have happened when the vehicle hit him. So that's what the prosecution are claiming. The defense, alternatively, are claiming that Brian Albert and Colin Albert attacked him. The other partygoers didn't know, because they took him to the basement, that Colin had a long-seated argument, fractious relationship with John, and took the opportunity while they were down in the basement to attack him. Right? Then they realized, they knocked him out, then they realized he wasn't waking up, and they realized he was dead or dying. So what they decided to do, because it was snowing, to carry him out into the yard and leave him there. And that's when Jennifer, who was at the party, Googled how long does it take someone to die in the cold? Because if they could leave him outside, claiming that he died from being hit by a car, then they had to make sure that he would be dead properly dead by the time someone found him. That's what the defense is claiming. I wonder if the shards of glass were found away from his body. No, they were found near his body, and there was blood on them, apparently. Way too many people for conspiracy to be true. Well, it wouldn't have to be too many people. It would only have to be Brian, Colin, and Jennifer. Like the argument would be that nobody else at the party knew. So they'd leave his body down in the basement, go back to the party, and then when the party goers have left, then they go and put him in the yard. And there wouldn't be footprints of people carrying him out because it was snowing. So the footprints would have been covered up by the time he was found. So they had to make sure that he was out there long enough for him to die and to make it look like either an accident or somebody killed him outside of that house. All right, so let's listen to what these experts say about the autopsy. As I said, I haven't read the autopsy report for myself. I'd like the autopsy report if it's available, because I'd like to do a video on it. If I can get the autopsy report, if that's available, I'll do a separate video on the autopsy. They're accusing the medical examiner, the ambulance, the driver, and the district attorney. Well, they're saying that the cops are covering up for a fellow cop. But the actual people who were there, who really knew what happened, would only have to be Brian, Colin, and Jennifer. But then there's this general cover-up, because the lead investigator, so Detective Proctor, is a friend of Brian Albert. So the defense are saying that the the lead investigator should never have been Proctor because he was a friend of Brian Albert. So because he's a friend of Brian Albert, he'll cover up for him. And then the saying that the comments that Karen made to the first responders was as a question, not as a statement. Did he ever go in the house? Well, that's the $6 million question. That's what we don't know. We don't know because there's more. The defense are also claiming that shortly after this happened, Brian Albert changed the floor in his basement, so took the floor up and had new flooring put down in his basement. Also, he sold his dog, or got rid of his dog. Get to the dogs shortly. And then sold his house. Now, the prosecution claim that Brian Albert was already in the process of selling his house. So that wasn't as a result of what happened. It was going to happen anyway. But I'd like to know why he changed the floor in his basement. Was it to make it a better prospect for sale? Was the flooring in the basement damaged and he rectified that so that he could sell his house on a higher price? It is very suspect. Very suspect. So the fact that the flooring in the basement was changed is a problem. Even bigger than that, the problem is that house was never searched because it was assumed that he didn't go in the house. So if there was a crime scene in that house, all that evidence has been lost because no one searched that house at the time. And then since, it doesn't matter if it's been sold because the cops can get a warrant for the house even though it's been sold if they need to check the basement. But if the flooring in the basement is completely different, then all evidence has gone. So the defense have got a very good point by saying the lead investigator should never have been a friend of Brian Albert. The Alberts should have been considered suspects, even if only to clear them. So their property should have been searched, if only to clear them, but it was never. Oh, there's a load of shady stuff. Every time I turn on Court TV or ABC and this case is going on, like there's new stuff. It's mad. I know she's changed the story, Heather, and that's a problem as well. That's a problem as well. Like at first she said she couldn't remember. Like the comments that she made to the first responders were, did I hit him? Did I hit him? That's what she's saying, she said. They're saying she said, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. So she admitted it. She's saying it's in the form of a question, which changes the context. Now, so the story changed by the time she got doing interviews with ABC for Nightline. She said she remembers him getting out the car and going to the house, but she doesn't know that she didn't see him go in. She saw him go into the side door. She doesn't say she saw him going in. Now, look, it is possible, guys. It is possible that if you're, because when the first responders arrived, she was still under the influence of alcohol. Yes, she'd have sobered up somewhat, but she was still under the influence of alcohol. When as time progresses, you can remember stuff that you thought didn't know. I mean, it is possible, you know, after, you know, it's a traumatic event under the influence of alcohol. It is possible that as the weeks progress, your mind clears and you remember more details. The cops always will tell witnesses who have had trauma, whether it's witnessing someone dying or being attacked, they will always say things will become clearer. And if you remember anything else, come back, because you can remember things more clearly as that trauma response subsides. So I can believe her. I can believe her that initially she didn't know what on earth had happened. And then as the weeks progressed and her trauma response subsided, that she remembered more. I mean, we don't know. We don't know. It is a red flag that her story has changed, but I think that can be explained. It can be explained both ways. Right, let's hear what Vinny's experts have to say about the autopsy.
Panel tonight. In Cope, South Carolina, expert witness from the Alec Murdaugh trial, currently Chief Deputy of the Orangeburg County Sheriff's Office. You recognize him, Dr. Kenny Kinsey of Kenny Kinsey and Associates. Joining us in Barrington, Rhode Island, board-certified forensic pathologist, Dr. Priya Banerjee. In Jacksonville, Alabama, forensic death investigator, professor of forensics at Jacksonville State University, host of the very popular Body Bags podcast, Joseph Scott Morgan. And in Salt Lake City, Utah, retired police commander, host of Profiling Evil on YouTube, Mike King. Whew, great to see everyone. Guys, I'm just going to go ladies first. I'm sorry. We'll start with Dr. Priya Banerjee. We just went through these autopsy results. As you listen to them and you look at the results here, is it consistent with someone being struck as someone is backing up a car?
Well, I think, you know, it really depends on the body conformation, the body position, but potentially that forearm could be a pattern from the car, from a car parked. But I think really what it shows is that
No. I'm sorry, no. But I'll let her carry on talking. I'll talk about that when we get to the court hearing. But no, I'm sorry. That is not road rash. That is not injuries from a car part. No, I disagree wholeheartedly with that.
I mean, that's not typical for a dog bite. Usually you have like the canine punctures and then small marks from the...
How about a canine scratch?
I still think that's less likely.
Gotcha.
No, disagree. I'm curbing it, Michelle, curb it. I disagree. That could be dog scratches. And also, dogs don't necessarily leave a big, like, imprint of their entire teeth. Puncture wounds from the dog's canine teeth can leave marks exactly like that. I know because I've had it. Guys, I've had it.
I've seen various dog bites, and I think, I mean, if you mean canine scratch from his nails or from his teeth, maybe from the nails, but I still think they're too close together.
How about the multiple?
No. All right. I'm just going to let her talk. I'm even going to mute my mic. I'm going to let her talk because I'm going to come back to that when I play the clip from the May court hearing. I'm going to mute my mic.
Skull fractures. The multiple skull fractures.
That's really where the money is. That's the really most concerning part. The skull is not going to fracture without a significant impact. So whether he's hit somewhere else and falls and hits his head or is run over and that's causing the skull fractures and the laceration, you're getting the black eyes from blood draining from the inside. It's not from being punched in the face. So really, we call those raccoon eyes. You see that like it's a medical term where emergency personnel, you know, anybody who deals with trauma knows, oh my gosh, this is a critical injury because there's a basilar skull fracture. So the base of the skull is crushed. It has, and all that blood's leaking down. That in and of itself is I mean, can be lethal. Obviously, he survived a little bit for the rest of his body to be stressed in the cold weather. And those hypothermia findings are non-specific. Like we see them, we don't. But all in all, I would have to agree that there was an element of hypothermia.
Joseph Scott Morgan, what does your gut tell you on the level of these injuries and the allegations here that there's a drop-off and then she backs into him with the right rear part of the truck? It's an SUV.
Yeah, this SUV, I think that it's significant. Also, you've got a broken tail light that's in play here.
Oh, we're going to get there. We'll get to the tail light.
I didn't mean to. I'm not intending to bury the lead here, Ben. But this is significant because one of the reports reads that he was holding a glass and that they found shards of glass that may have been embedded in the bumper. And back to the doctor's point just a moment ago, relative to these injuries that you're seeing, one of the things that we look for in pedestrian strikes with motor vehicle accidents is we look for something called bumper marks. Generally, you see them on the leading edge of a car. If somebody is standing erect and they're trying to cross the street, one of the things that you see is that they're struck, generally around the knees, that sort of thing. Ben, he doesn't have any insults, it sounds like, really inferior to his hips. Everything is kind of taking place up above that. It would almost give you potentially the indication that he was in an asymmetrical position relative to this vehicle, with this vehicle potentially towering over him as she's impacting him. I think that that's kind of significant. And the scratches on the arms, I'm fascinated by this because it's cold weather, Ben, as you have well stated. He would have had layered clothing on, Ben. So this is not something, these injuries, I know the head trauma requires a tremendous amount of force, but this could very well be consistent with almost a rollover type event where the vehicle is running over him to generate this through a layer of clothing. However, we are absent one key piece here. We don't know how he was clothed at this point. So that's going to be significant.
That's going to be significant. All right, let's take a look here, Dr. Kinsey. Evidence found near O'Keefe's body, okay? So he's in that front yard area. The snow has fallen down. As Joseph Scott Morgan was saying, they located a broken cocktail-style glass and multiple patches of red that appeared to be blood in the vicinity of where the body had been located. The Canton officers secured the glass and 6 blood samples from the snow as evidence. We also have to note that his cell phone was found underneath his body. Not in a pocket, but loose and under his body. Dr. Kinsey, putting the pieces together that we have so far, what is it telling you?
Well, Vinny, I got to agree with the fine doctor and certainly the professor. Both of them have great points. And looking at those injuries on the victim, things I noticed was their uniform and they're very symmetric. I'm agreeing with doctor and professor. I believe we may have the victim down, and I would start looking for something under that vehicle that can make those injuries, because they don't look like an animal injury to me, and certainly they are uniform to the trained eye. So I'd start looking under that vehicle and see what kind of evidence I have, and maybe they have that. Maybe that's what they're banking on in this, but that is where I would have started.
Okay, let's take a look at the Lexus SUV, Mike King. They observed fragments of broken glass on the rear bumper of the vehicle. The rear right passenger side taillight was shattered, and pieces were observed missing from the red and clear areas. On the right side of the rear tailgate, a deep scratch and minor dent were observed. On the right side of the rear bumper, above a small red light, 2 scratches were observed, and one area where paint was chipped off. Does that sound like that could happen from striking and killing John O'Keefe?
Absolutely, and I think that's the elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about, is the fact that there is physical evidence that supports that there was a collision between that vehicle and some object, and his body happens to have a whole bunch of damage to it. I'm a kid from the Utah mountains, Vinny. I know what it's like in the snow, and I know how easy it would have been for him to slip or fall and that car to roll under him, and I'm really looking forward to what forensics they might recover from underneath that vehicle. Doesn't look like dog bites to me, and it certainly fits the scenario, but they got to answer the elephant in the room. How did that broken glass get there? How did that cocktail glass get embedded in the bumper? How did that vehicle end up leaving the scene of an accident? Because I'm sure they're going to be able to compare that broken glass and that vehicle together.
All right, let me throw a little curveball at everyone when it comes to that right rear tail light. Here's Karen Reed's defense attorney showing another piece of evidence that they uncovered. Take a look.
The taillight was intact when she left Brian Albert's house. She came home, and this was Karen leaving to begin the frantic search for John O'Keefe. Now, I don't know that you can see it from the video that you have there, but there is no doubt that when that SUV comes into contact with what is John O'Keefe's vehicle parked in the driveway, you can see that rear tire move forward. It rotates. And you also see the light shatter from the taillight being broken.
All right.
There you go. I was just looking for the other clip, the other Court TV thing. I didn't realize they got the clip in this, but this is how she claims she got a broken tail light. So let's really slow this down and have a look.
I don't know that you.
So that is where she's claiming her tail light got broken. It's just that scrape with that vehicle there. So the damage to the back of her vehicle, the defence are claiming, is this, when she was setting off to look for John. So does that look broken? You can't tell at all. You can't tell whether it's broken on that, but that's what she's claiming. It's not glass though, is it? It's plastic. It doesn't explain the glass she had in her bumper though. That's a good point. I agree. That's a good point. What was the glass in her bumper? But what we don't know is whether the glass in her bumper was consistent with the glass that was at the scene near his body. So you think it does look broken? I don't know. I can't tell. I don't know whether they looked at the other vehicle. I don't know. I really don't know. Now, the glass in the bumper, I think that, again, will be a battle of experts at the trial. So is the glass in the bumper consistent with the cocktail glass? So that's John's vehicle, so you assume they did. Maybe they did. But there was an impact. Watch it again. Gone too far the other way. Right, watch. There's a scrape, rather than it's not a bump, but it is a scrape. So that's how the defence are claiming the taillight got broken. So she turns. But what the defence are also claiming is that the taillight, there's a video, I mentioned it earlier, there's a CCTV video that the defence have been given that shows Karen, that would have shown Karen's vehicle with the broken taillight earlier than this, so on her way home from dropping John off. So if that taillight was broken after she dropped John off, it means that it couldn't have been it couldn't have been this event that broke it. If it would have already broken, it wouldn't have been this event that broke it. It would have been the impact with John. Now, strangely, the time that car, Karen's car, would have passed by this CCTV camera, that time is missing from the file, and the prosecution are claiming that, oh, sorry, it's a glitch. We'll try and get it fixed. So that's dodgy. All right. So the injuries. Now, when you're impacted, when a vehicle impacts you, one or two things can happen. Yes, it's snow. Yeah, lots of snow. The impact didn't shake the snow off his car. Well, it wouldn't have done if it was like a scrape rather than an impact, like a bump. You'll be able to see the white bulb through the broken pieces, though. This is the issue. That tail light was broken. I can't tell off that video, but that tail light was broken. So it either occurred when she impacted John, or it occurred at this impact when she scraped that car. It was broken. All right. So when you run over, one of two things can happen. Firstly, you can get dragged under. If you're dragged under, it can lead to catastrophic injuries. Catastrophic. As you're dragged under, you've not only got the impact from the either the front or the back, whichever it got you, depending on whether the driver's going forwards or backwards. If you're dragged under, not only do you have the impact injury, you also have the evidence from the drag, right? So you see lots of superficial injuries to the body, like road rash or bruising. We don't have that with John. All we've got externally, other than his head, is that right arm. So the panel on Court TV all seem to believe that those injuries could be consistent with a vehicular impact. And what's his name? Mike King from Profiling Evil. He was on the panel, and he said that it could be from something from underneath the vehicle. Well, what underneath the vehicle would create scratches like that? That would have to be explained, how that could have happened without any other injuries. Because if his, let's say his right arm was up, like he fell over and his right arm was up, and the underside of the vehicle scratched him in some way, well, how come then there was no impact injuries or scrapes to his left side? Because he would be lying on his left side, wouldn't he? He'd be lying on his left side with his right arm up, so the right arm was scratched by the underside of the vehicle. But as he was pulled under, there would have been road rash on the left side of his body, and there isn't any. So the second way that the second thing that can happen to you by motor vehicle incidents, collisions, is that you're thrown upwards. So you're either dragged under or you're thrown upwards. It depends on speed, on the place that the vehicle hits you. If you're flung upwards, then there's very little injury to the external of your body. Like, you don't get drag marks or scrape marks or anything like that. And I've been told this by an expert in this area. When my son was killed, he was dragged under. That's why he had catastrophic injuries to everywhere on his body. I mean, his autopsy report was just a complete, he was annihilated by that vehicle because he was dragged for about, I can't remember now. I think they said 40 yards or something. It was a long way anyway. Under this vehicle. So he had the collision injuries, and then he had that killed him. The impact killed him, but the everything else that was damaged was due to him being dragged for so long. And the expert who told me what happens in motor vehicle collisions was one of the guys who was on his case. And he said the second way that you can get damage to your body is if you're thrown upwards. Now, you're more likely to get thrown upwards if you're smaller. It depends on, like I said, it depends on the speed, it depends on how you hit, it depends on the position you're in when you're hit. Children tend to get thrown upwards for what, like, just a regular sized car impacting a child tends to throw them upwards. Now, I witnessed one of my dogs from a long time ago. This was from 2010, so a long time ago now. I had a little Yorkshire Terrier called Basil who got hit by a car. And he was thrown upwards. He was literally thrown into the air and like somersaulted in the air, and he was dead. And all he had no injuries whatsoever. And all I could see when I picked him up, I ran across the road, nearly got hit myself. Someone was on the phone to the cops, because in the UK, it's the same as a human. If you leave the scene of an accident, it's a crime. So that person drove away, didn't stop, didn't slow down, nothing, didn't slow down. I don't think they realised they hit him though. In all fairness to them, he was so small. I think that it was a small car. It was a low-seated car. And I think it was like the wheel or the bumper that got him. I think it would have been a wheel that got him, because I don't think he was even high enough to reach the bumper. He's tiny. I think the wheel hit him, and because he was so small, I don't think that driver realised. But I'm sorry if this is triggering anybody. It is horrible. But he flew up into the air. I mean, it was just like, I can relive it now, and it's like slow motion in my head still after 13 years. It'll be 13 years in December that this happened. And I can see it. I can see it right there. I can see it right there. And he had no injuries, none to his body, except for when I ran over the road and picked him up, he was bleeding from his ears. And he's just fractured his skull. But the cops came. The CCTV at the shop nearby, unfortunately, is one of those cameras that pans. Like it goes like, it stays in one place for a bit, and then it moves, and then it moves. I think it has, I don't know, 3 positions. And unfortunately, when that impact happened, the camera was facing the wrong way. So they didn't catch the driver. But the cops were on it. Cops came round to see me. Cops took a statement from the driver who witnessed it, that like there's a driver coming the other way who stopped. And she was on the phone to the cops by the time I'd gone over the road and got Basil. Because it's a crime. It's the same crime as leaving the scene of an accident in a case of a human. I don't know why. It's not for a cat, but it is for a dog. Heather, thank you for becoming a member. Welcome to the Secret Agents Club. So yeah, smaller children, dogs tend to be thrown, whereas heavier people tend to go under. But it does depend on the positioning. And I think this is going to be crucial, totally crucial. Right, so this is the house. Now, she was backing out, apparently. So, correct me if I'm wrong, anybody who knows better than me. No, we don't have dog licenses anymore. But yes, it does stem from the days when dogs had to be licensed. Whereas cats under law are considered a wild animal. Did you know that? Did you know that? All right. So, I remember being in a car with my friend and we hit a cat. She was driving. We hit a cat. And it was in the middle of nowhere. It was like on this country lane. There was no houses around. And we just felt this little bump. And she said, I've hit something. And we thought it was a fox, because lots of foxes in that area. We got out. It was this little cat. And it's like, she was crying. She was crying. I wasn't. I was like, I've got to... Like, I was thinking, if this cat's still alive, I'm going to have to kill it now. I'm going to have to put it out of its misery. That's what went through my head. I couldn't have left a cat to suffer, but it was already dead. And that was bleeding from the ears and the nose. So, hitting the head. Anyhow, sorry, guys, if this is really triggering for you. Like, I could talk about this stuff, and it really doesn't bother me. I mean, to talk about my son and to talk about my dog, you think it would, but it kind of doesn't. That's why I'm not squeamish. I can look at crime scene photos. I can talk about crime, and these things have impacted me personally, and I've been through the trauma of it all. But I can talk about it. All right. So this is the house. So what I think she did was backed in and then backed out. So if she was backing out like this, so her right tail light would have been on this side, wouldn't it? So let's say this is her car, right? So that's her right tail light, isn't it? So if her right tail light was broken on impact, and Andre, you're gonna have to rewind. I can't start from the beginning. It's not a new case, no. This is a case from 2022. So she'd have hit him. He'd have fallen to the floor. So she's backing up. She's hit him. He would have fallen. How would he have fallen? Would he have fallen backwards? Sideways? Now, if he'd have fallen backwards, she'd have reversed over him. Surely. If he's been knocked backwards, he'd have gone under that vehicle, and he would have been dragged. Did she drop him off in the road? Maybe. I'm just using this vehicle as an example. I mean, I'm thinking that that she pulled into the driveway, but I'm not sure. But she could have dropped him off here. All right, let's say she dropped him off here. Right. So she pulls up here. Right. Let's say this. She pulls up here. And then he gets out of the passenger seat. Which way is the passenger seat? Passenger seat's here, isn't it? In your, like in my world, drivers here, passengers here. In your world, drivers here, passengers here. All right. What if she's going the other way? What if she's going the other way? So passengers here. All right. So he gets out. He walks around the vehicle to go into the house. And then she backs up. Which direction did they come from? I don't know. That's a good question. Somebody knows. Somebody tell me. She was facing the other way. All right. So she's facing the other way. So you guys drive on this side of the road, don't you? Like we drive on that side of the road. I find it really confusing when I have to do it your way, guys. But if she was facing this way and he got out the passenger seat, well, how did she hit him at all? She was facing south, down closer to the flagpole. All right. Right. Oh, God. Here. Right. So she's facing this way. Right. Right. Because he was found close to here, wasn't he? On the left side. Right, so this is a flagpole. So she's facing south. So that's that, isn't it? Or is that south? Which is south? Hold on. That's north. So she's facing this way. Am I in the right place now? That's north. Hold on. Let's reset this. Right, so that's north. That's north. So the other way is south. Right. Right, so this is south. This is south. So she's here, about here. Flagpole's there. Right. So if he gets out the passenger seat, well, he doesn't have to go behind the vehicle at all. He's just going to walk on the grass and walk on the grass, surely. He's not going to walk round the vehicle, is he? The other south, yeah. Like if she was facing this way and she was further up here, let's just say she was here. Because look, this is how I've been imagining it. That if she hit him accidentally, this is how I've been imagining it. That she stopped here or in the driveway or wherever, and he's gone round the back. And she's not waited for him to pass by. She's just set off and reversed into him But the only way she can reverse into him if he's in the back of at the back of the vehicle. Yes, the trial starts in March. Kim. March 24th, I think. But if she's facing this way, here, that's the flagpole. If she's facing this way and he gets out the passenger seat, why is he round the back of the vehicle anyway? That doesn't make sense. He gets out of the passenger seat. Unless he was was he driving? If he was driving, then he'd have gone this way and she might have just scooted into the driver's seat. But it's my understanding that she was driving. It's her vehicle, she's driving, she drops him off. Exactly. But this is what I'm saying, Joe. If he gets out of the passenger seat here, he's straight onto this grass. He doesn't have to go around the back of the vehicle because the house is here. So how could she hit him by reversing? She'd have to reverse onto the grass. So I don't get it. If she's facing this way and he is in the passenger seat, how on earth could she have hit him? Unless she was that drunk, she drove onto the grass. And if she drove onto the grass, she's had to go up this. How big's that curb? That's quite a big curb, by the looks of things. She's had to go up the curb, hit him, and then not realise, and then drove off. Why would she have to reverse anyway? Well, if she was going the other way, if she was coming this way, right, let's say she's coming this way, she stops here, and then if she's going to turn round and go back the other way, then she might reverse to do a manoeuvre in the road. So that's possible, that she's manoeuvred. She's going back the other way, so she's had to turn round. So she's reversed onto the grass and hit him, and then done a manoeuvre, 3-point or 5-point turn, whatever, in the road and gone back the other way. But the only way, surely the only way she could have hit him is if she was that drunk she drove onto the grass. Because he wouldn't need to go around the back of the vehicle. Because he didn't have to get out and go around the back. She dropped him in front, 3-point turn, and maybe clipped him twice. But then why is there virtually no injuries to the outside of his body? I don't get it. I'm truly Switzerland in this case. Truly am. I said right at the beginning, I'm Switzerland. I could see, my opinion is, charging her with murder, they've overcharged her. However, I can see that it's perfectly plausible that somebody who is intoxicated can run someone over and not realise. And if if that's happened, and that's what the evidence leads to, then Karen should be charged with manslaughter, not murder, manslaughter. But I just can't see how she's hit him. I don't get it. Because he would walk on the grass, either across the lawn or like along here and up here. I would imagine you'd just go across the lawn. But if you're he'd have to be like here or wherever, and she's reversed round like this, hit him, so gone up on the curb, gone up on the grass, hit him, which would make sense. If he's here, her tail light would be there, and then she's gone round and that way, and then gone back that way. So I could get that was be the only way how it could happen, that she's reversed on the grass, not realised. So she's bumped up the curb, not realised she's even on grass, not realised she's hit someone. It's possible, but then how did he get those injuries? So let's talk about his arms. Right. So this is from the hearing in May. This is from May the 3rd. So this is one of Karen's defense attorneys. And we're talking about the injuries on his arms. So he's got virtually no external injuries. Virtually none. Yes, there was snow on the ground. Yeah. It had started snowing by the time they left the bar. And then by the time John was found, it had snowed pretty much all night and he was covered in snow. So it's possible that when the people left, they didn't see him because he was covered in snow. Is it possible he was beaten and hit by a car? Well, he'd be the most unluckiest man in the world if that was the case. I mean, technically possible, but I don't know that anybody's suggesting that. She did say she waited outside for 10 minutes, but that was a story after the fact. She didn't say that straight away. She said that after the fact. Now, whether she actually did or didn't, we don't know. Someone said they saw her in the car after he got out. She had some light on and they saw her. She hadn't moved the car yet. Surely he would have been in the house by then. Yes, that's another thing. There's a bunch of other stuff that I'm not gonna be able to get into today, but there's so much, right? There's somebody who claims to have seen Karen outside. And the prosecution, though, are saying that John was still in the car when that person passed by. There's somebody who was a worker, like with a snowplow or someone gritting the roads, or I don't know, somebody working with the snow anyway, a worker, who passed by around 2:30 and said he definitely wasn't out there. That he would have seen John if he was in the yard, in the front yard at 2:30. So you've got the snowplow driver or the gritter, whoever it was. We have gritters here in the UK. We don't have snowplows. It doesn't snow often enough. But at night, the gritters come out. But anyway, the snowplow guy passed by the house around 2:30 and claims there was no one in the front yard. Now, is it possible that that guy passed by and John was there, but covered in snow? And we don't know exactly what he was wearing, but we do know he wasn't wearing a coat. Well, according to Karen, he wasn't wearing a coat. So let's talk about these injuries. Right, I'm going to play you this. This is Karen's defense. And he's talking. This is a really, really interesting hearing. this hearing here from the 3rd of May, and then there's a hearing from September. Please go and watch them. This one's an hour long. The other one's nearly 2 hours long. Please go and watch them. If you don't know anything about this case, you'll be shocked. Just the amount of detail that's backwards and forwards in these 2 hearings, you'll be like, oh my word. Because I've only just watched these, right? The only place I've been watching this case or following this case is via Court TV. And what Court TV has said is just a fraction of what has come out in these hearings. Like the back and forth between the prosecution and defense is like, my jaw was on the floor. That's why I decided to do this live today, because I've been watching these hearings thinking there's so much more to this case than I realized. What's a gritter? What they do when it snows round here in the UK anyway is like sand. It's like a combination of it's like a salty, sandy substance, and it's very gritty. And they go along the main roads in the middle of the night and they grit them so that they remain free from snow and ice. That's a gritter. It's like a lorry that comes along spewing out grit in the middle of the night. Chasing Truth did a timeline. Did she? I'll go and watch that. All right, let's listen to this. So this is regarding the arm injuries. All right.
That is undisputed fact, where he was found dead and what the circumstances were surrounding that death are why we're here now. Second undisputed fact, when John O'Keefe was found, he had this set of wounds on his right arm. The medical examiner indicated that these wounds were concomitant with his death in terms of the temporal, the time that he died. These were wounds that he suffered at or near the time that he died. And the Commonwealth looks at these wounds and says, there's nothing to see here. Why are we looking at this? This is, you're following a red herring, basically. This is just a road rash. This means nothing. It has no impact on our case one way or the other. This is, according to the Commonwealth, simply a set of injuries that John O'Keefe suffered at the hands of being struck by a moving vehicle. Well, first, I would ask the common sense question, does this look like a road rash?
Oh, I've been talking and I've been muted. That's annoying. That's annoying. I haven't said very much. I said, welcome, Donna, to memberships. And the people who've joined memberships today, there's a members area, there's some members lives, there's some short videos, there's some status updates. And I also asked you whether you want to see what road rash looks like. Let's have a look at road rash. Let's have a look. Oh, road rash is a game. Right, road rash injury. Okay, right. Road rash is that gory. Right, Google. Google doesn't want me to see any injuries. This is what road rash looks like. Okay, are we sure we want to see it? All right, that's not spectacular. Let's have a look. Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. Look at that. Look at that. That's road rash. That's road rash. Come on. Right. That's road rash. This is not road rash. This is not road rash. Come on. Road rash. Scratch marks. I've had road rash, not as bad as that. I've fallen off my bicycle so many times. I've been flung over. I was hit behind by a car and flown over and scraped along the ground. And both my knees and my forearms were completely rashed up. What it does is it takes the top layer of your skin off. Like it's a scrape. Road rash is a scrape. Those are cuts. All right. And to me, that one could very well be puncture wounds from a dog's canine teeth. When a dog bites you and clamps you, then yes, you get impressions from the other teeth as well. But it's the canines that do the most damage. The canines rip. So you can get a puncture wound just from a canine. Now, I've been bitten and had canine bites, and I've still got the scars on my hand. A dog got me through a letterbox. I was posting mail, and there was a dog behind the door. I was delivering leaflets. There was a dog behind the door, and I put my hand through, and the dog got me, and he gripped me with, it was just one canine. I managed to pull my hand away, but it ripped all down one side of my finger into my palm of my hand. Like, I can't show you. They're so faint now, but anyway, that's a long time ago. And it's a tear. Now, I used to have 2 terriers, Poppy and Bella. Poppy, the Jack Russell, died in 2021. Bella died last year. Terriers fight. Right? Not all terriers. Some terriers are really nice, but Poppy and Bella, they had a very close relationship, but they argued, right? And every now and again, they would fight, and they never got bitten. There was never any biting, but there were puncture wounds. So they like grip and then let go straight away, thinking, oh shit, I've gone too far. And I've seen on both Poppy and Bella marks that look exactly like that. Exactly like that. That looks like a canine to me. These look like scratches. Now, when Mike King said that they look too far apart, I don't know that they do. Because the dog's front paws, they've got 4 toes. And then the 5th toe, which is essentially the thumb, is called the dew claw. And that's partway up the paw. So they have 4 toes. The first 2 toes, the middle 2 toes are the long ones, right? So when a dog jumps at you and scratches you, if those 2 middle toe nails are long, like Tilly's got long nails, and I can't even cut them because the quicks are long as well. So if I try to trim Tilly's nails, I cut the quick and they bleed. She's just got naturally long nails, right? And when Tilly jumps at me, just playing, I get marks exactly like this. Exactly like this. So if one toe gets you, you get a mark like that. If both toes get you, because they're closely apart, they look exactly like that. So they look like they could easily be dog scratches, and those 2 look like puncture wounds. That's just in my opinion. Now, could they be scratches from underneath the vehicle. Well, yeah, if there's something underneath the vehicle that would leave marks exactly like that without leaving any wounds to his other side, which would have hit the deck. Because if the vehicle reversed over him or dragged him, he definitely would have injuries to the other side of his body. So if he, right, back to this, right, so if she drops him off here, right, facing south near the flagpole, he's on the grass, he's walking on the grass, and she reverses and hits him, and her right tail light is damaged. Well, and he falls down, he's on the grass. So how would the underside of the vehicle scratch him? Unless he's here and she drives over him. So if he falls onto the grass and she drives over him, how come he's not got more injuries than that? And then how did he get his head injury? Because if she knocks him over, what hit him in the head? What hit him in the head? Unless he'd have to be bending down. Like, I don't know, he'd have to be bending down to tie his shoelace or something for her to hit him in the head. I don't get it. How did he get a damage to the back of his head that resulted in radiating fractures that resulted in him bleeding out of his eyes and out of his nose? So if she hit him, if she knocked him backwards, he's on grass. Now, could she have hit him here? So he's walking along the curb and he's hit his head on the curb. That makes more sense to have a skull fracture, because if you fall backwards and hit your head on a curb, yes, you can seriously injure yourself. But that would mean he'd have to be in the road. You saw this case on that chapter. Oh, was that chapter done it? I really like Mike from that chapter. I've missed a lot of that chapter. What I tend to do with that chapter is not watch him for ages and then have one day when I binge and I just watch that chapter for an entire day. That's what I tend to do. Same with Christina Randall. I do that with her as well. And Kendall Ray. I tend to just like have one day when I binge on them. So he'd have to be then in the road. Why would he be in the road when she's facing this way and he's in the passenger seat? I don't get it. I don't get it. But he wasn't left in the road, Bridget. He was in the yard. He was found in the yard. So he was on the grass. He was in the yard. So it doesn't make sense. The prosecution at the trial are going to have to explain to me exactly how she hit him to receive virtually no external injuries except for a head wound that got a laceration on the back of his head, but it's inside where he's got skull fractures that radiate, that bleed, so that the bleeding in the brain is so bad that he gets 2 black eyes and a busted nose, a bloody nose. So, and this. The only external injuries virtually. Oh, also, he's got some bruises to the back of his hands. All right, so how has he got bruises to the back of his hands if he's hit by a car? You get bruises to the back of your hands when you're holding your fists up to defend your face. I know this because I was a martial artist. And when you defend, you hold your fists up and you get bruises to the back of your hands and the kind of back end of your forearms. And yet the prosecution say that there's no defensive wounds. So what are the bruises to the back of his hands if they're not defensive wounds? I don't know. Ask him for a friend. All right, let's listen to what the defense has to say about the dog.
Commented with his death in terms of the temporal, the time that he died. These were wounds that he suffered at or near the time that he died. And the Commonwealth looks at these wounds and says, there's nothing to see here. Why are we looking at this? This is, you're following a red herring, basically. This is just a road rash. This means nothing. It has no impact on our case one way or the other. This is, according to the Commonwealth, simply a set of injuries that John O'Keefe suffered at the hands of being struck by a moving vehicle. Well, first, I would ask the common sense question, does this look like a road rash? I mean, the court's got years, decades of experience, life experience, and legal experience. Of course, this doesn't look like a road rash. It's not a road rash that any of us have ever seen. Or does it look more like claw marks and bite marks from an animal, which is exactly what they are? Second, if it was a road rash, where's the rest of the road rash? John O'Keefe had one set of injuries like this: deep scratches, deep puncture wounds on his arm, on his right arm only, from mid-biceps to mid-forearm and no other place. For instance, mid-biceps and mid-forearm that you might put in front of your face or your body if a large animal was attacking you, resulting in these wounds. Why are the wounds confined just to his right arm? What about all the other pointy bits of the human body? If someone is rolled under a car or rolled in gravel because of the car, what about the shoulders? What about the knees? What about the ankles? What about the elbows? None of that exists. These are the only wounds that are confined to his right arm, and they're deep scratch wounds, puncture wounds that are indicative of claw marks and bite marks from a large animal.
Okay, the other thing, he talks about the dog in a minute, but the other thing that could be was scratches if he fell onto that glass. Do you know, remember the cocktail glass? But what happens when you cut yourself on glass, shards of glass, especially if you fall on it and you're lying on it? What would you find in those wounds? You'd find glass. So this is why I want to see the autopsy report, because I want to know if there were shards of glass in those cuts. Because I could accept that they were caused by him falling on shards of glass after the glass broke. He was knocked over, knocked the glass out of his hand, and the glass shattered, and then he rolled onto that glass. But surely there would be shards of glass in those wounds. So that's a question. I don't know the answer to that, but that's a question that I would have. That's why I want to see the autopsy report. All right, he talks about the dog now.
And third, what about the Commonwealth's own expert? She has to have opined about this, correct? She has to have said during the grand jury, this was a full-throated investigation surrounding the potential murder of a police officer. What does the Commonwealth's own expert say? First of all, she was never asked by the Commonwealth during the course of the grand jury about the injuries. It took a grand juror actually asking the question of the witness, and she said, no, I cannot say that is a road rash. There's certainly not enough evidence to suggest that these wounds are consistent with a road rash. Well, she had to have at least talked about the fact that it was an animal, right? She had to. The Commonwealth had to have asked that question. She actually said nothing about whether or not that's consistent with an animal, because the Commonwealth very particularly did not ever pose that question. But we did. We hired one of the preeminent medical examiners in the country, a doctor by the name of Sheridan, Frank Sheridan, and he wasn't some deputy medical examiner. Dr. Frank Sheridan was the medical examiner for San Bernardino County in California, with more than 12,000 autopsies under his belt, the supervising medical examiner for one of the largest counties in California, and he concluded to a scientific certainty that these wounds are from an animal attack. Period. Full stop. So what do we know about animals and the Alberts? Which is exactly where Officer John O'Keefe was found dead. In February of 2017, we know that the Alberts had a dog. There's a photograph of Brian Albert with a dog, Chloe, in the foreground. By 2019, the Albert family had registered ownership of that German Shepherd. Moving on to 2022, in January of 2022, specifically January 29th, John O'Keefe suffers these animal puncture wounds, these animal scratches, these animal bite marks that are heretofore and up to this date, today, completely unexplained by the Commonwealth. By May of 2022, Karen Reed's defense team starts asking questions about this animal, about these injuries, about the dog, about what dog existed at the Albert's house. Where is the dog? We started inquiring pretty significantly. That same month, amazingly, the Alberts informed the Kent Animal Control that the dog was remarkably and mysteriously rehomed. The dog was gotten rid of. And to date, the Commonwealth has yet, as my colleague just mentioned, has yet to release the tissue samples to us for DNA testing to determine if there's evidence in these wounds of a canine attack, which we believe there will be. During that grand jury testimony, Brian Albert admitted to three things. Number one, he admitted that he owned a large German Shepherd. His words, not mine, a large German Shepherd. Number two, he admitted that the dog was at his home on the night John O'Keefe, early morning hours, John O'Keefe was killed on January 29th, 2022. And the dog, according to his own testimony, was inside the house and never in the front yard, which is where John O'Keefe's body was ultimately found. And the third thing that he admitted was that the dog was, quote, not great with strangers, end quote. That's a dog owner's euphemism for the dog bites, the dog attacks, the dog.
Yeah, it is. It is. Oh, he's not good with strangers, you say when you know your dog bites or your dog is likely to bite. Right? And this dog was a biter. Apparently, they got rid of Chloe, the German Shepherd, because she was a biter. A big German Shepherd, a large German Shepherd, they said. Brian Albert himself said that Chloe was a large German Shepherd. Except John wasn't a stranger. How often had he been to that house? Did Chloe know him? Look, German Shepherds tend to be, not all, but they are a guarding breed and they tend to be reactive. They also tend to latch onto one person, like one human. Let's imagine the situation, even if Chloe knew John, let's go with Chloe knew John. What would happen if her human, Brian, was in a fight with John and Chloe jumped in to defend her human and started jumping at John, so he puts his arm up to defend himself, and she scratches him, and then she ends up puncturing him before she's pulled away. Just asking that question, because to me, that does not look like road rash, and to me, those look like scratches from a dog paw, and there's two that look like puncture wounds. That's just in my opinion of 50 years of dog ownership and being bitten myself, being scratched a lot myself, being and breaking up dog fights and seeing what puncture wounds look like, and that's what they look like. But I'm willing, I'm on the fence, I'm Switzerland, I'm willing to change my view if the prosecution can prove that they are more likely come from underneath the vehicle. I want to know what part underneath the vehicle could cause those wounds. Now, the dog was gotten rid of. Where's the dog now? We don't know. Apparently, she was taken out of state, out of the jurisdiction of the court in Massachusetts. So we don't know where the dog is now. To you know, get a measure of the dog's paws. Look how far apart her claws are. Look at her teeth. Look at the swabs from the tissue samples from those wounds. Because if those wounds were caused by a dog, there would be some kind of saliva, something in those wounds. If those wounds were swabbed, there would be saliva from a dog if those were puncture wounds. Right? There wouldn't necessarily be anything if there were scratches, because they look fairly superficial, but still from the puncture wounds, there would be saliva. If they were from glass, surely there would be glass shards in there. So I want to know what that forensic testing looks like that was done on those scratches, because those scratches to me could make or break this case. Well, not necessarily make or break, but certainly create reasonable doubt in the jury's mind. All right. Moving on. Final thing we're going to talk about is DNA. Like I said, I'm only playing very small clips from these hearings. The hearing in May was an hour long. This hearing is nearly 2 hours long, but I'm only going to play the last few minutes. And this is about the DNA, because there was a hair found. There was a hair found that looked like a human hair from the tail light area of Karen's car. So that's the last thing that we're going to do in this live stream. I'm just going to go and open the door for Cassie because she wants a wee. So please hold. I'll be back in a minute. All right, I'm back. So there was a human hair found. Now, this is the hearing in September where they discuss it. But in short, they've had a discussion about this already by the time I get into this. But in short, the hair didn't have enough DNA on it, because the DNA comes from the root, right? And there wasn't enough skin cells in this root to find out conclusively whether this was human hair. So they had to revert to saying, oh, well, it was just DNA on the back of the car. There was just DNA on the back of the car. Yeah, but John was in that car. They lived together. Of course, there's going to be DNA on that car. So let's listen to what they say. So I'm jumping in kind of mid-conversation, but there's a back and forth between the prosecutor and the defense, which is interesting.
I'll just request that the bail remain the same.
I'll say this was an interaction that occurred during the request to reduce the bail. Like, she's out on bail, but they want her to not have to pay the bail and to be released on her own recognizance. So the conversation is happening during that interaction as to whether she should have her bail reduced. So it's not a discussion about DNA specifically, it's about bail reduction. But what the prosecution is claiming is she shouldn't have her bail reduced because there's DNA. So that's the context behind it. All right.
There's no change in circumstances of the facts, and I use that term loosely, as Mr. Yannetti was recounting for the court. Notably absent from his motion in regard to the apparent hair, which I've gone into great detail to explain. I won't bore the court with that explanation again. But what it leaves out is, again, yes, as counsel was alluding to, there were 2 items that were tested for DNA, one of which being the taillight housing. Just to be clear, the taillight that was within the defendant's vehicle, which was then compared to the DNA of the victim, Mr. O'Keefe, and that there was a significant statistical probability of comparison between Mr. O'Keefe to a number followed by 30 zeros, that Mr. O'Keefe's DNA was on the taillight. The same taillight that was broken when the defendant struck Mr. O'Keefe with her vehicle. Now, as far as what counsel states as Mr. Loughran's testimony goes into a great detail in the motion as well. What he leaves out, though, is that all these insinuations that the Ford Edge somehow belongs to the Alberts, or Brian Albert's Ford Edge, or something to that effect. What he leaves out from that interview with Mr. Loughran is that Mr. Loughran specifically says that that Ford Edge is not Brian Albert's Ford.
Oh, I turn my mic off so that there's no background noise, and then I forget to turn it back on. So the Ford Edge is another issue. Not going to get into that today. There's so much in this hearing that I could have got into, but I'd be here like literally all day. If I went through a 2-hour hearing, I'd be literally here all day and all night. So let's go to what the defense says. So he says, so this is the prosecutor. He says that there was DNA on the back of Karen's vehicle around the taillight area where it was broken. That is consistent with it being John's DNA. The hair that they found, the one solitary hair that they found, they could not get DNA from it. But there was DNA that is very likely from John at many zeros, so John's DNA. But it's not surely without the realms of possibility that John's DNA is going to be on that vehicle anyway. But let's go to what the defense says in response. All right. Okay, start there.
Free subject to random testing with a scram device, based on the nature and circumstances and based on the indictment she faces in this court. Thank you.
Okay. If I may respond briefly to 2 points, Judge.
Okay.
First, with regard to the DNA being a match or a presumed match of John O'Keefe, what Mr. Lally didn't tell you is that that sample was a mixture of John O'Keefe and 2 unknown people. So I don't know if the Commonwealth is changing its theory again to say that my client struck John O'Keefe and 2 other people and the other 2 people somehow got away. But that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. The second thing is, with regard to the Ford Edge that Brian Loughran saw outside that property, I would say 2 things. Number one.
Okay, so what the defense is saying is that the statistical test that was done on the DNA sample was a mixture of John's DNA and then 2 unknown people. Now, again, that's not a problem, right? The defense was being a little bit facetious, saying, well, are they seriously saying that she hit 3 people and 2 got away? No, right? But it's the outside of a vehicle. DNA can transfer onto a vehicle by someone passing by and accidentally touching it, or by taking it to a garage to get repairs done. There could be DNA on that taillight area from someone who, I don't know, repaired the taillight in the past or washed the car in the past, whatever, right? So it wasn't a clean DNA sample. So we've got a hair on the back, 1 solitary hair on the back that they can't confirm where that came from. They don't know it's John's. There's not even enough DNA to say that that came from a human, let alone whether that was John's hair. Now a hair on the back of a vehicle in an area that was damaged, and oh look, there's someone who died. yeah, that's more incriminating than just a general swab for DNA. Because a general DNA sample can come from anywhere. Right? John lived there. John got in that car that very night. And the two unknown people who were in that DNA sample could have touched that car accidentally or repaired that car or whatever. Right? The hair would be more incriminating. But unfortunately, not only can they not tell that that came from John, they can't even say that that came from a human. So that's out of play, in my opinion. So what we're left with is a whole bunch, and this is why I'm Switzerland. This is why I'm on the fence still. We've got a whole bunch of evidence, and the defense are doing really well, in my opinion. The defense are doing incredibly well, in my opinion, in creating reasonable doubt. They've come out fighting. And for something that is, at the very least, a tragic, tragic accident, I'll go back to what I said at the beginning, that I do not believe that she should have been charged with murder. At the very least, she should have been charged with manslaughter. And this trial is going to be fire. This is going to be another trial that is going to be fascinating. It's going to be a long trial. There's going to be a lot of experts called. And I'm reserving my final judgment as to what happened for the trial. Because based on what we know at the moment, I can't say what happened to John O'Keefe. All I can say at the moment is that there's no evidence that she intentionally did anything. None whatsoever. And the evidence that is there for vehicular manslaughter, I can accept that. I can accept that it could possibly be a vehicular manslaughter. However, there's so many things that raise red flags for me, or reasonable doubt if I was a juror, that at the moment cannot be explained. The injuries, in my opinion, are not well explained by a vehicle accident. The more likely explained, in my opinion, by a fight that wasn't meant to be murder. I don't think anybody meant to kill John O'Keefe that night. I don't think anybody ran him over to kill him. And I don't think anybody fought him to kill him. But what if there was a fight and John defended himself, got scratches and bite marks from the dog, and he fell backwards? If you punched and you fall backwards and you hit your head. Now, if he was in the basement, what happens if he was going down the basement and a fight broke out and he hit his head on a step, on a floor, on a wall, and they panicked? They panicked and they did not know what to do. In my opinion, there's as much evidence for that as there is for vehicular manslaughter. Unfortunately, what we don't have are some key pieces of evidence. We don't have Chloe the dog because she's been rehomed out of state and nobody seems to know where she is anymore. Whether she's even still alive, we don't know. Thank you, Ashley, for the $20. Thank you, thank you. We don't know this Google search, which I haven't talked about much, but which is potentially very incriminating, at 227 from Jennifer McCabe. What else have we got? We've got the Ford Edge, which I haven't talked about, but I'll leave that for another day. We've got the floor from the basement being removed and redone. The lack of searching beyond Karen's vehicle. I don't know. I don't know, guys. I don't know. But I definitely think, one thing's for certain, I definitely think she's been overcharged. And given the amount of reasonable doubt in the case, I can't see a jury convicting her of murder. I can't. I honestly can't. But I will reserve my final judgment for the trial. There's so much more, though. There's so much more to this case. If you're interested, if you've never heard of this case before, and this has, piqued your interest, then the hearing from May and definitely the hearing from September, that's the latest hearing, are really, really interesting. Definitely check those out, if nothing else, because they tell you so much more than any of the court TV shows or the ABC shows or anything like that have said. There's so much nuance. The back and forth between the defense, who are fighting this case so well, and the prosecution. The defense sound way more confident than the prosecution does at this stage. Now, that doesn't mean anything, because at the end of the day, it's about the evidence. The Google search is the key. It's a key. That Google search, I think, is going to possibly be, at the trial, a battle of experts. What about the arm injury? Yeah, I've just talked about the arm injury. How did he get to the house? Well, he was dropped off at the house. Go back to the beginning. If you just come in and you don't know what on earth I'm talking about, you'll need to go back to the beginning. But I am going to call it a day here. There's so much more to this case. And it's so much more than I realised. I've been following this case via Court TV, listening to Court TV, and thinking, oh, it's interesting. I don't really know. But listen to the court hearings, and I was gobsmacked when I listened to those hearings. I haven't read any of the court docs yet, but I am going to dig into the court docs, and I need the autopsy report. If the autopsy report's been released, I need the autopsy report. I really need the autopsy report. This article that I read a few paragraphs from at the beginning, that tells the story. Tells the story in a very easy to read, novelistic way. So if you don't want to bother with the court hearings and you just want something to read, it's quite a long article, but it's an easy to read article, and that's from the Boston Magazine. So yeah, I'll call it a day here, and I'll continue to follow this case, and let's see what comes out. I think the next hearing's in December. So yeah, before you leave, if you haven't done so already, please do like the stream. Like the stream. Oh, Deet says it's not been released. Oh no. Thank you, Cindy, for the $10. Glad I'm confident now. Invested in this one for a few months. Live local to the area. Enjoy my coverage. Oh, thank you, Cindy. Thank you for the $10. So the autopsy report hasn't been released. That's annoying. That's annoying. That's key. That's a key piece of information that I want. It's interesting that that's not been released when a whole bunch of court documents have, but the autopsy report hasn't. That's very, very interesting. Very interesting. All right, guys. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for the donations. Welcome to the new members. Thank you, as always, to the mods, even though I don't know if I've had any mods in even. I haven't seen any. Well, no worries. I always thank the mods, whether or not they're here. They do a grand job. All right, guys. Enjoy the rest of your day. evening, night, wherever you are in the world. And I'll see you very soon for another video and another case. Yeah, bye guys.